The speculation is over and we have been decoding what the Finance Minister's budget means for India and the India growth story. We've got a star panel joining us here today on CNBC TV 18 to make sense of the Finance Minister's full budget. Joining us is our guest editor today, Ashok Wadhwa of Ambit Holding. Also with us, Sudhir Kapadia of EY, Sandar Kochhar of ICICI Bank, Harish Salve. We've also got a whole bunch of other experts joining us from Moody's at C-State to Sharpodar of Goldman Sachs. So let's get straight down to business. Ashok, you've been with us through the day making sense of the budget. You've now had time to digest the fine print. You've had time to look for any nasty surprises perhaps in the fine print. How would you assess the budget, and what to your mind has been the big takeaway from Arun Jaitley's first full budget?
So, it's interesting. This is one of the rare budgets where the detail does not actually unfold or indicate any significant deviation from what, the headlines and the Finance Minister's broad budget speech kind of indicated and laid down. And I would say the most important takeaway for me in this budget is plug and play. If doing business in India and ease of doing business in India is an important criteria, and I think we all got to agree that that's the single most important change that this country needs to inculcate if we are serious about growing our economy on a sustainable basis. And attracting large...
Ashok, for the uninitiated, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for the uninitiated, plug-and-play essentially means that the government or the bureaucracy gets all the regulatory approvals that are required for a project to get started before they hand it over to whoever wins the bid. So that's what the government is hoping to do as far as the plug-and-play model is concerned. They're starting with UMPPs and they're hoping to take that forward for a whole bunch of sectors. Sorry, Ashok, go ahead.
And Shereen, what's interesting is that he's touched upon two very different and extreme points of convenience, if I may say so. On the one hand is the big, ultra mega power projects, 4,000 megawatt power projects, and we all know how difficult it has been over the years, going back to 1992 when Enron first tried to do a project in India.
Yeah.
All the way through, it's difficult, land acquisition, getting regulatory approvals, environment clearances, etc., is a real nightmare. To try and get all those clearances, put the burden on bureaucracy, in one way...
So you're saying plug and play. Plug and play is a big game-changing idea as far as this budget is concerned. The second game-changing idea, if there is a second...
No, I think the second game-changing idea is really to provide consistency in way the tax regime will be implemented going forward. I think, it's very important. It's not about high or low, it's not about a little more tax or a little less tax, but it's about giving a direction and committing to stay to that direction, whether it is on your fiscal deficit or indeed in your tax regime. I would say those are the two.
Harish Salve, let me come to you and ask you what you thought were the 2 or 3 game-changing ideas of this budget. Ashok Wadhwa believes the plug-and-play model that the government is hoping to spread across the infrastructure sector was the single biggest game-changing idea. I wanted to ask you first if you have a list of game-changing ideas, if at all this budget provided any, and also then I want to ask you specifically about what this government is hoping to do to address the issue of black money, and if that is actually going to complicate matters as opposed to making the scenario better.
Let me, as a student of constitutional law, start by telling you, first of all, this budget cannot be read by itself. The budget speech, I think it's all of 27 pages. It has to be read with the economic survey, which is a masterpiece. I've never seen an economic survey written in this fashion. A lot of government policy is found in the economic survey. For me, the first game changer is that this is a truly federal budget where the union is budgeting for 38% of gross revenues. The states are being truly empowered, not by word, but by cash.
Yeah.
Governance will now have to come state upwards. The second game changer is, this is the first budget, and when I say budget, I will say read it with the economic survey, which does not pander to populism. The economic survey in the list of important changes made by the Modi government flags the presidential approval to the Rajasthan change in labour law as a very significant change. Now that's a change in direction. Third, abolition of wealth tax.
But Mr. Salve, I know you're saying that we should read the budget document in
applying hard economics.
Go ahead, sir.
See, abolishing wealth tax and removing exemptions and putting a reasonable corporate rate of 25% is doing away with populism and bringing hard economics into the political regime of tax instead of the other way around. I mean, already I've heard some criticism saying, oh, you must be very happy, rich people are happy. They don't realize there's that 2% surcharge, it levels off. But the hassle of filing wealth tax returns. So what I'm saying is there is a lot. And the fourth game changer I find is, this is the first budget which has planted the seed of social security.
Yeah.
There were fiscal limitations on fiscal space. It has planted the seed of social security. I hope the next budget brings in pensions as a semi-compulsory measure, becomes a great source of raising funds for investment, great source of savings for the individual, and we run it on that line.
Well, already in the course of 5 minutes on this show, we've come up with 6 game-changing ideas that our panel believe this government has been able to deliver on. Before I get Anand Sharma of the Congress Party to respond to that, let me ask Mohandas Pai. Mohan, you're always very candid. Do you have anything to add to the 6 game-changing ideas that have already been discussed by Harish Salve and by Ashok Wadhwa?
Yes, Shereen, bankruptcy code, very important because bankruptcy is essential for banks to recover money. A code for public procurement, very essential to remove corruption. Dispute resolution mechanism, extremely important. The creation of a national market for agriculture and 100,000 kilometers of rural roads, that is very, very good. Like Harish Salve said, comprehensive social security, I think that is great. And there are 2 more things I want to find out, tell you, Shereen. The outlay for roads has gone up 3 times by 54,000 crores. Going up 54,000 crores in 1 year is extraordinary. Outlay in railways has gone up by 34,000 crores. Now, our supply chain cost is 13% of GDP. China is 6, America is 5. If you bring it down to 8%, we'll see a tremendous improvement in productivity in this country. So I think these are something which are really revolutionary, especially on the roads. I think I must compliment them for focusing on supply chain because that is essential for competitive manufacturing.
All right, Anand Sharma, now let me get you in on this conversation, sir. We've already got more than 10 game-changing ideas that our panel believes this budget has been able to deliver on, whether it's a bankruptcy protection law, it's a dispute resolution mechanism, it's plug and play, it's a very significant thrust as far as infrastructure spending is concerned. Those are just a few of the game-changing ideas that our panel believes that Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has been able to deliver on. Why does the Congress Party then, sir, say that this is an anti-poor budget, this is a pro-rich budget, that this is an anti-growth budget, that this budget has nothing to offer?
Can I tell you one thing, Shereen? If you read the budget should not be the finance minister's speech. And as my friend Harish Salve was saying, that the economic survey, you read the previous economic surveys, they always paint a rosy picture. So a day before the budget, the economic survey comes. It's not for the first time. Second thing is that on the devolution, or the allocation or the distribution of the revenues to the states. This is not the first time, my dear friends. The Constitution of India stipulates that Article 280 gives the mandate to the Finance Commission. This was the 14th Finance Commission set up by the UPA government, terms of reference finalized by the previous government. Prior to that, the 13 Finance Commissions made the recommendations which had to be accepted in toto. So these Finance Commission's recommendations, if you read the Constitution, had to be accepted.
Yeah.
So nobody has obliged the states.
No.
But more important, it's for me to point out, please allow me, is that where is the more devolution to the states? If 1,46,000 crores is the devolution, that's true. 1,09,000 crores has been cut from the plans, and another 1,33,000 crores have been cut from the central assistance to the states. Please read the budget carefully. In addition to that, there has been more than 4% cess. I'm not talking of the services tax, that's a burden on the poor or the working class. Even those who don't pay tax, but that is a big burden, plus the 4% tax cess, including Swachh Bharat as well as the clean energy. That all goes to the Consolidated Fund of India. Not even a penny will go of the central cess collected to the states. Now when we talk of anti-poor, where is the expansion of the social security? Old age pension schemes have been there. In most of the states you'll find, and there is a component of central funding. Please go through the state budgets also before we make a final comment on that. But here, look at the allocation for women on gender budgeting, cut down from 80,000 crores by almost 18,000 crores. Take the case of ST. Instead of increasing, we have brought it down by 11,000. Take the case of scheduled caste. Again brought it down by another 17,000 crores. Take the case of education. The allocation has come down by 18,000 crores. Your central revenue, this budget is smaller than the previous budget. And your revenue collection is going to fall by 56,000 crores. That's the finance minister's statement, not my statement. So this is your one game changer. And this is about the social security agenda. The other dear friend of ours who was saying, your panelist, about the plug and play, fine. I will agree that this is a step forward, but let's look at it. The ease of doing business is an ongoing process. Shireen, you are aware of the National Manufacturing Policy, which we had rolled out on 25th of October 2011. And National Investment Manufacturing Zones, which 16 notified, 4 launched, including Dholera in Gujarat was launched by me, which are budgeted for by the Government of India, and Japan is a major development partner. So the single window clearance mechanism has been put in place. Even the
I agree, sir, that it is a work
of the
in
state.
progress.
So it is not you know, when you no. Even finance minister's claim today that he launched the e-ways is shocking. I expect Arun to have intellectual honesty. This was conceived in 2009 and you are privy to that. Pilot project completed in 2011. The platform launched at the Agra Partnership Summit on 28th of January 2014. No, what I'm saying, let's not mislead the people. No, I launched them. I'm extremely sorry. Can you relaunch what I have done? Can you remove my name?
All right.
My name is my government. Please, what do you mean by credit?
I understand.
What do you mean by credit? It's the same.
No, I understand that, sir, but I'm afraid if we go down that road, I'm afraid if we go down that road, we will consume the entire duration of this program, sir.
I have been forced to point it out. Okay,
let me get each of them to respond to that. Let me get each of them.
If you are expanding on something, then say I'm expanding. But don't say that I am launching, because this is not yours.
Mr. Sharma, let me get each of the panelists who presented those game-changing ideas to respond. Harish Salve, Anand Sharma saying that this government has been intellectually dishonest. A lot of it is what you are articulating as game-changing ideas, a carry forward from the UPA. Ease of doing business has been a work in progress. Even as far as the numbers are concerned, you've actually seen allocation to certain sectors coming down. I don't want to get into the fiscal constraints issue, but respond to the points and the argument that are being presented by Anand Sharma.
Shereen, I only heard the last minute because there was some problem with the audio. But let me start by saying, as a citizen of India, I don't know who has intellectual property rights to any of these ideas. All I know is I've seen it in a budget today. I praised the finance minister. If the previous finance minister didn't have the courage to articulate it, well, they have their own political compulsions to thank. Secondly, I remember the last
it was the
budget
economy minister way to do it.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Secondly, I had read the previous budget where Mr. Chidambaram had taken credit for substantial increase in tax revenues, and the only source which he suggested where they would come from is that the 6,50,000 crores worth of gridlock projects would be kickstart. Everybody knew that was just pumping up figures in order to spread money on popular schemes. So, you know, when you say you roll back certain items of an expenditure, you have to fit your coat to the size of the fabric. So I don't think this kind of abstract figures really help anybody. 38% of the revenues are all that the union government has today.
What is this?
States are being empowered.
Figures
That's an extremely important game changer.
No,
I'm sorry, Shereen.
I don't want to, sir. I will come back to you, Mr. Sharma, in just a second. Let me bring the other panelists in on the conversation as well.
38. We have only 38% of revenues in which there has to be balancing. Something has to give. Well, it's a matter of priority which everybody does.
I'll come back to you.
Absolutely. And
Mr. Salve, I'll come back to you.
Signal investment in railways.
I'll come back to you, sir. I'll come back to you. Tushar, you've probably doing the number crunching, and you can hear the arguments on both sides at this point in time. The government has decided that they will have a slippage as far as the fiscal deficit target of 3.6% is concerned to 3.9% in order to provide themselves with a little space to fund infrastructure projects, to give away that additional 70,000 crore rupees in terms of public investment. You've heard the arguments that have been made so far. As far as the fiscal consolidation roadmap is concerned and the credibility of the budget numbers, your comments, Tushar Poddar.
So I think that the roadmap is pretty credible because it was very difficult for them to achieve 3.6 when you have this big federal sort of structure in place where the government is sort of moving so much of the revenues to the states. So, you know, there was a shrinkage in the revenue base, as was pointed out earlier. So what we need to do now is to start not only looking at the central balance sheet but also at the state balance sheet, because the states are going to get 36% of central revenues this year and 62% at some stage. So I think that the 3% is achievable in 3 years' time. I don't think that the market is going to penalize the government for attaining 3.9 in FY16. But I think that when you add the states, then we get a rather disconcerting picture, because our deficit then swells to more than 6% of GDP, whereas the Asian average is about 3% of GDP. So it's not enough for the center to say that we are moving to 3. We need the center plus states to move to 3. And that is going to take some doing. So I think that in terms of the devolution of revenues to the states, the finance minister has done as well as he could have in this budget. If you actually subtract the revenues as well as the central assistance to the states in terms of the programs, the deficit actually would have come down to 3.7. But I think that the roadmap is fine. I don't think that they should have sort of gone in for great fiscal consolidation, but we must start analyzing the state deficits a lot more closely going forward.
That's a point well taken, and that's the point that Arvind Subramaniam, the Chief Economic Advisor, yesterday articulated as well, that we need to start looking at deficits on a consolidated level. But let me quickly get in Asif Sheth of Moody's for a quick comment as far as the fiscal deficit number is concerned before we take this conversation forward. Asif, thanks very much for joining us. A quick word there on the fiscal deficit number and the roadmap.
You know, if you look at it from our perspective, which is a relative ranking of sovereign creditworthiness, even if the deficit target had been stuck to the 3.6 for next year and 3% over 2 rather than 3 years, India's fiscal deficit, that is the state plus the central government deficit together, which is what we look at, would be higher than about 70% of the countries that we rate. So whether, you know, it's 3.6 or 3.9, it remains very high relative to the rest of the world. So I think from our perspective, the number isn't what's important per se. What's important is that there is a roadmap. But again, I reiterate that the number is not very important. It's really the policies that underpin the budget that are more important from our perspective.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Asif, in just a bit to just decode the hits and misses as far as this budget is concerned. But Sudhir Kapadia and Siddharth Birla, let me put to you your game-changing ideas as far as the budget is concerned. We've already articulated 10 so far. Sudhir Kapadia, do you have anything to add to that list? There was a lot of stuff on the tax front. Anything specifically there that you believe is a game-changer?
Well, on the tax policy, I haven't seen a budget which spells out a medium or a long-term stable tax policy as far as the corporate rates are concerned. To my mind, India has never articulated a policy which says that we'll have a 25% rate of corporate tax, mind you, along with rationalization and removal of incentives of all sorts and kinds.
Yeah.
And he made it a point to say the individual exemptions will continue. So you're trying to bring more disposable income in the hands of individuals, but reducing corporate tax rates, making them more competitive. So as far as the rate policy is concerned, I think it has been very clear. As far as a word out on direct tax code is concerned, at least for once now it is clear that we are burying the direct tax code. Whatever is good in that code has been brought in. So I think in terms of explaining what the government thinks on certain aspects of tax policy, it has never been as clear as it is in this budget.
All right, so clarity, that was what industry wanted, and we do have clarity. Of course, there is a 4-year timeline that we'll have to wait before we get down to that 25% as far as the corporate tax rate is concerned. Siddharth Birla, quick comment, because industry is disappointed because adding the surcharges, at least for this year, your corporate tax rate goes above 34%, a little higher than about 34%. But eventually, over the next 4 years, you're hoping to come down to about 4 years. The last conversation that you and I had, you said that mangne ke din gaye, and that seems to be very clearly the message that the finance minister is sending out. Exemption Raj is over. You've got to deal with being competitive on your own steam, on your own merit.
Yes, Shereen, on principle, I think we are fairly happy with whatever the finance minister has said. Yes, it's disappointing if we have certain burdens on us, but on a lighter side, you need to make income before you can pay income tax. So I think a lot of the industry is still suffering.
Hasn't he solved that problem? Hasn't he solved that problem? Yes, there is a balance sheet issue that corporate India is facing, sir, but hasn't this budget in some way tried to address that problem?
Yes. It has tried to address it, but ultimately, you see, it is when the consumer sentiment improves, when the market really picks up, and the competitiveness of India is maintained. These are the two things which are going to impact the long-term profitability of any business. And even the ease of doing business is one component of the cost of doing business. And it doesn't help to be in the easiest place in the world to do business if you are not competitive and if you can't make money. So we find a balance. But if I may just add, I think one of the very important shifts was how do we keep fiscal discipline, at the same time how do we have less government in the life of a citizen and in the life of business. So how does one, I think the signals are given as to how the government spending, the revenue spending will be sort of controlled, compacted. As he said, subsidies, I'm not here to remove the subsidies, I'm here to stop the leakage of subsidies. So the size and spending, revenue spending of the government goes down and the capital spending of the government goes up. That is going to be the need for the next decade. So I think we started on that.
Okay, Mohandas Pai, you had a quick comment and then I'll go to Chanda Kochar.
Yeah. Shireen, the most important thing for the tax policy is the increase in tax. Next year 16%, last year it was 20%, and for the last 4 years, because of very high target set by the former finance minister, there was perverse assessment, tax harassment and tax terrorism. Out of 16%, 5% is because of the oil increase which has come this year, last year, and because of the service tax increase. So actually buoyancy is only 11%. So hopefully tax terrorism will come down, and that to me is very, very important because industry has suffered from tax terrorism due to very high targets, and that is not there this year. He's been intellectually honest in creating very clear target which is achievable.
That's a good point that you make, and I want to get Ashok Vadra and Sudhir Kapadia to both comment on that. It's a credible tax number that they've held out, a growth rate of about 15.8%, and a non-adversarial tax department is probably now going to be a reality because you're not going to have to chase unrealistic targets. Ashok, a big positive for you, and then Sudhir, I'll come to you for a comment on that.
I would say yes. I think he's been particularly conservative on tax collections. If we give relevant importance to the scheme that he's going to launch on black money, I dare say that scheme alone has the capability of bringing in significant revenues and improving our tax to GDP ratio. And then on top of that, by setting a more benign tax budget, he is hopefully giving a loud message to the revenue authorities that you don't have to cause tax terrorism. Having said that, the department is so used to a particular way of operating that I'll be absolutely delighted if they take this message seriously enough and indeed even dilute tax terrorism, forget eliminate it.
All right, so a quick word on that. Do you believe that we are going to see that shift that's been signaled by the Finance Ministry?
I think the estimate of indirect tax increases next year, 24,000 crores. No doubt we have increased the service tax rates. I would only hope, because this year the indirect tax collections have been very tepid, so I would only hope that the base expansion allows that kind of increase in revenues without much difficulty. I don't think 15% in my view is very conservative. If you look at the actual tax base growth, it is still quite optimistic. If you look at tax buoyancy, it is still far higher. So I would hold my horses on, a mitigated tax administration on the ground.
Okay, Chanda Kochar, one of the concerns perhaps or a view that we would like is that what does this now do as far as the monetary easing ability of the Reserve Bank is concerned, because we have gone from 3.6 to 3.9. The Reserve Bank has made it very clear that it will be looking very carefully at the government's fiscal consolidation roadmap. Do you believe that there is any reason to believe that we're unlikely to see the kind of expectations that people have in terms of monetary easing from here on?
Well, I think, first of all, this is a very pragmatic balance between fiscal deficit and growth, because clearly, as you are saying yourself, the initial public investment is required today to kickstart the entire investment story. So I think, in that sense, it's a very pragmatic and an approach that was really required, given the fact that the ultimate number has been kept. It's just that it's been moved by 1 year. As far as the monetary policy side of it is concerned, we must remember that finally monetary policy also looks at inflation. And I think inflation structurally depends a lot on the supply side economics. So with investment, with growth, if we can increase production and productivity, and along with that, if we can focus on agricultural productivity, which is another thing that the budget spoke about, I think that those are the things that should start creating that room for the monetary policy. So clearly, we have to look at how do we address the supply side, and there are various ways of addressing the supply side which can finally actually control inflation as well.
Okay, Mr. Sharma, let me come to you now, sir. We've got a fairly comprehensive sense of what people make of Budget 2015, and so far the consensus seems to be that the budget has moved in the right direction to get the economy back on track. On the specific issue as far as the black money concern is concerned, we've actually seen the government now talking about a legislation to be able to address that issue. You don't take it seriously at all from the sound of it.
You see, the laws which are there are adequate. If Mr. Jaitley is trying to say, and you all are believing, that India so far has no laws on the statute laws to deal with this issue. You have the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, you have the FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act, you have the Income Tax Act. I would like to ask a counter question. That under which laws the action are being taken, the information that has been received from Switzerland, from Liechtenstein and other countries, because of the various tax information sharing agreements over 80 which India had entered into earlier, many people are being prosecuted. The Supreme Court is monitoring. If there is no law, how people are being prosecuted? Can you answer that question of the Finance Minister, who is a very able lawyer? This is just to an apology to cover for the promise given to the India that we will get all this money within 100 days by Prime Minister Shereen Narendra Modi. Now you are going to create, they say, draconian laws. That's what he says. If you read that clearly, that we will have this punishable by 10 years of imprisonment if you do not give information about the assets held abroad or properties. Do you think the present laws allow you to do that? The answer is no. Even today you will be prosecuted. So this is let's not go by that.
You're right there.
So this gentleman who was here, that is saying, this gentleman who was believing that for the first time India is becoming from a banana republic to a rule-based, rule-governed country, I must correct you, sir, this is not the case. This is a political statement being made to cover up for the Prime Minister's boastful claim. That's all. The long and short of it. And the second thing I must tell you also about this direct benefit transfers. Don't forget, yes, direct transfer of benefits, that the unique authority UIDAI started there. DTB was part of the vision and we were implementing it, which was opposed then. And the present Prime Minister, when Nandan Nilekani was contesting from Bangalore, had gone there to campaign and said that the moment I become the Prime Minister, I'm going to scrap it. So now I'm very happy that they have adopted it. So don't say, don't say that these are game changers. They have just accepted what we were doing.
Credit in an interview with me a short while ago. He's given Nandan full credit. But I'll come back to you, sir.
Let them not say that these are game changers. These are game changers.
I want to take the black money issue. I want to take the black money issue forward and give the last word to Mohandas Pai before I let him go. Mohandas Pai, Anand Sharma there does have a fair point. Do we really need a new law? Do we not have the ability to prosecute now? Do we not have the ability to penalize people now? Do we really need a new law as far as tackling the issue of black money is concerned?
I agree with Minister Sharma on this matter, because I think we don't need a new law. We are not implementing a existing law. We have a broken court system. It takes years to prosecute people. We don't have a mechanism for gathering intelligence and information. We don't have a system of asking people to file. If we don't do all this and pass a law, it will become a source of harassment. It will become a source of corruption. And we've seen it happen innumerable times. And I don't think this law is going to be effective. I totally agree with him on this. We have to revamp the way we handle this. We must have better policy to make sure sources of black money are arrested and they come down. When we get information and gather them, we must have a court system which prosecutes within 2 or 3 years. So the message goes out, you contravene the law, you go to jail. Now with this, the court will give a state 15 years and go to court. Nothing is going to work.
Yeah, all right. So there's agreement there between Mohandas Pai and Anand Sharma that there was no need for a new law to deal with the issue of black money. But let's move away from that issue. And Atsi, let me come back to you in terms of the hits and misses to your mind on the budget. You've talked about the fiscal consolidation roadmap, but the big hits and misses for you.
From our perspective, like I said, I think it does two things. It's not a surprise. I think that the sort of widening of the fiscal deficit target was signaled well in advance. And I'll say two things about the budget in India. I mean, people look for big bang reforms, especially because this is such a market event. But this budget shows that there is a vision. You may agree or disagree with it, but there is a growth vision. But much more important from our perspective is the implementation of that vision. So if you're going to widen the fiscal deficit because you want to do more public investment, what's important is not how much you widen the fiscal deficit by, but how effective that public investment was, how productive growth was that was yielded by that public investment.
All right. At the hold that thought, I am going to have to take a quick commercial break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll come right back to our conversation here on the India Budget Hour, but do allow me to take a quick break.
You are watching India Budget Hour live.